Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're exploring some really interesting information you shared with us. It's all about a topic lots of us face, building a solid self-study routine, especially, for learning English.
Mm-hmm. It's a really common thing, isn't it? You want to study on your own, take control,
Yeah.
but actually starting or keeping it going, that can be tough.
Absolutely. Maybe you've felt a bit lost, like, where do I even begin? How do I make studying alone actually work and not just feel, random?
Right.
So this deep dive, we're focusing specifically on the ideas from the material you sent over. We're pulling out the simple, practical tips to help you study smarter and hopefully stay on track.
Think of it like we're sorting through those insights for you, finding the key takeaways, the little nuggets that can make your self-study journey feel a bit clearer.
Okay, let's dive in. So the material we looked at really drove home that the first step, the foundation really, is setting a clear goal.
And clear is the key word there.
Yeah.
The information suggests it needs to be way more specific than just, I want to learn English.
Right, because that's just too big, too vague. It doesn't really tell you what to do next, does it?
Exactly, no direction. So the examples given were things like, maybe you want to improve your pronunciation so people understand you better when you speak.
Or maybe focusing on fluency, making conversations feel, smoother.
Yeah, or building vocabulary. That came up a lot. Just wanting to know more words and phrases. That seems to be a really common goal for learners.
Makes sense.
And it could be a mix, too, like wanting better fluency and more vocabulary. But the really crucial point from the material was making these goals manageable.
Ah, yeah. This seems to be where people can stumble, based on the examples. They talked about setting these massive goals, like trying to learn, say, 1,000 new words in a month.
Wow, yeah, that's huge. And the material pretty clearly says that often just leads to feeling overwhelmed.
And then giving up, right?
Yeah.
Because it just feels impossible to keep up that pace.
Exactly. So the advice that came through was basically start smaller, much smaller. If vocab's your thing, maybe aim for 50 words or 100. Not 500 right off the bat. Okay. And one source made a really good point about quality. It's not just about the number of words. It's about really understanding maybe 50 words well.
Knowing how to actually use them.
Yes. Knowing how to use them in a sentence correctly. That's way more valuable than just like memorizing a huge list of 500 words you forget next week.
That makes a lot of sense. Quality over quantity.
Right?
And the information was clear too, wasn't it? That everyone's different. What's manageable for one person might be way too much or even too little for someone else.
Totally. Your goals have to fit you, your life, your time, right now.
So aiming for 10 or 20 words a month, if that's what feels right, that's perfectly okay according to this material.
Absolutely. It needs to feel realistic and, interestingly, flexible, too.
Flexible? How so? What do they mean by that?
Well, they discussed how your goals aren't like set in stone forever. If you start and you realize, whoa, this is way too much, or maybe even, I could push myself a bit more.
You can change it.
Yeah. The advice was, it's fine, even smart, to adjust your goal. Adapt as you go.
Okay, I see. So you learn about your own study style as you do it. And the materials seem to suggest that actually reaching a goal, even a smaller one, like learning 20 new phrases, feels really good.
Oh, definitely. That sense of accomplishment, seeing progress, is super important when you're studying by yourself.
Keeps you motivated.
Exactly. So a good goal, based on this, is something that challenges you a bit.
Pushes you.
Yeah, pushes you forward, but doesn't overwhelm you to the point of burnout. It has to feel like, okay, I can actually do this.
Right. Okay, so step one, specific, manageable, adaptable goal. Got it. Once you have that, the source is then really stressed making a schedule.
Because without some kind of schedule, studying can just happen whenever.
If at all.
Yeah, randomly. It's hard to be consistent then, or even know if you're moving towards your goal.
Right. So the suggestion was to think about your own energy levels. When do you feel most productive? Are you a morning person?
Or maybe you focus better in the afternoon or after dinner. Exactly. The schedule should ideally match your pace, your habits. What works for your friend might not work for you at all.
But there was a warning in there too, wasn't there? About not making it too comfortable, too flexible.
Yes. That's a key point. If it's too loosey-goosey, it's super easy to procrastinate.
The classic, I'll do it later.
Which turns into tomorrow, or maybe next week, or never.
Been there. So how did the materials suggest making a schedule work without, letting yourself off the hook too easily?
The main idea was breaking down your study time into smaller, really specific tasks.
So not just blocking out study English for an hour.
Exactly. That hour after dinner could become, say, 15 minutes, review today's new vocabulary, then 20 minutes, listening practice with podcast episode X, and maybe 25 minutes, practice speaking using those new words.
Okay, that feels much more concrete. Did the sources say why that helps? Makes it feel more purposeful?
Yeah, pretty much. It helps you focus on just one thing at a time, so it's less overwhelming. Plus, you get these little mini wins within the session. Okay, vocab review done. Check.
I like that. And being realistic about the time commitment was important too, right? Like maybe starting with a shorter time, you can stick with.
Definitely. Better to do 30 minutes consistently than try to force 2 hours and then burn out after a week.
Balance again. Steady progress.
Okay, that seemed to be the theme.
Yeah.
Making steady, achievable progress without pushing yourself into the ground.
Now, let's picture this scenario.
Okay.
It was actually described in one of the articles. You've got your goal, you've made your schedule, it's 7 p.m., time for pronunciation practice.
Okay, yep. I sit down, ready to learn.
But you haven't actually chosen the audio clip you want to use. So you start scrolling through YouTube or your files, and your notebook is downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Your phone, which you use as a recorder, only has 10% battery.
Arc.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's frustrating. By the time I find the clip, find the notebook, charge the phone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe 10, 15 minutes of your precious study time just vanished.
Oof.
And you haven't even started studying yet. Right. You had the time, but you weren't ready to use it. And this is where the material really highlighted the next crucial step.
Preparation. It sounds simple, but it's key. Organizing everything before your study time actually begins.
So for that pronunciation practice, it means having the specific audio or video picked out before 7 p.m. hits.
Yes. One suggestion was to maybe create a playlist or a folder of materials ahead of time. Then before each session, just pick one thing you'll focus on. No browsing needed when the clock starts.
That sounds so much less stressful. And it wasn't just materials, was it? The space itself.
Right, the study space too. Making sure it's ready. If you use a recorder, make sure it's charged and sitting there. Notebook open, pen ready.
So when it's time, you just sit down and start.
Yeah.
You use the whole hour or however long for actual learning.
Exactly. That feels way more efficient and probably more satisfying too, knowing you used your time well.
Definitely contributes to feeling like you achieved something. And speaking of the study space, the materials spent a fair bit of time on creating the right environment.
Mm-hmm. Having a specific spot just for studying apparently makes a big difference for focus.
Helps your brain switch into study mode.
Something like that. And it's also about getting rid of distractions.
Ah, the big one. Social media probably came up.
Oh, yeah. Specifically mentioned. Just checking notifications, even for a second, or scrolling.
Yeah.
It pulls your brain completely away from what you were doing.
So the advice was, clear the space, only have what you absolutely need for that study task. For pronunciation, maybe just your audio source, headphones, a notebook.
And if you have to use your phone or tablet for the materials.
Airplane mode.
Yep, that was a tip. Put it on airplane mode so calls or messages don't pop up and break your concentration.
Smart. They also mentioned comfort, but not too much comfort, right?
Yeah. Comfortable enough to focus, but maybe not your bed where you might just drift off.
Good point. And little things like having water nearby.
Yeah, staying hydrated is good for focus in general.
Yeah.
And especially if you're doing speaking practice, good for your voice.
And good lighting, too, to avoid straining your eyes.
Mm-hmm. These small things, according to the information, they all add up. They make the process easier, help you stay focused longer.
So when you finish, you feel like you really made the most of that time because your environment was set up properly.
Exactly. Creating the best possible conditions for learning. Now, one thing people sometimes worry about with self-study is feeling, well, alone, isolated.
Right. It sounds like it's just you and the books or the screen.
But the material had an interesting take on this. It basically said self-studying doesn't mean you have to be a hermit. You can, and probably should, stay connected.
But wait, isn't that the opposite of self-studying?
Not really, according to the sources. They explained self-studying is more about how you approach it. You are in charge. You set the direction, the goals, the schedule, the focus.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you can never talk to anyone else about it or practice with others.
I get it. So it's about you being the driver, controlling your own learning path.
Exactly.
But you can still have passengers or ask for directions sometimes.
Nice analogy. Yeah. Like, you might study grammar rules by yourself using your materials, but then you'll probably want to practice using that grammar in a conversation with someone, right?
Mm-hmm. To get feedback It's hard to hear your own mistakes sometimes.
Impossible sometimes. You need that outside perspective. And connecting with others, according to the material, isn't just for feedback. It helps keep things interesting.
Breaks the routine.
Yeah, and helps with motivation, too. Studying completely alone all the time can feel a bit isolating after a while. That can make it harder to keep going.
Seeing other people learning, maybe sharing tips, or just knowing you're not the only one working on this, that could be a real boost.
For sure. So the takeaway seemed to be self-study gives you control, which is great, but involving others when it makes sense, that's okay and actually really helpful.
Okay, now moving on. The material was also pretty realistic about the actual study sessions themselves, saying it's tough, maybe not even effective, to just power through for hours without a break.
Yeah, trying to study for like 2 hours straight, your brain just gets tired, focus wanders.
You start feeling stressed or bored.
So taking short breaks came up as really important, just 5 or 10 minutes here and there.
And these aren't wasted time.
No, quite the opposite. The idea was these little pauses actually help you refresh so you come back more focused and productive for the next chunk of studying.
What kind of things did they suggest for breaks? Nothing too distracting, I assume.
No, simple stuff. Stand up, stretch, grab some water, or make tea, maybe look out the window for a minute. Just give your mind a quick reset.
Okay. And alongside breaks, staying motivated was another big theme, especially since there's no teacher checking up on you.
Right, you're relying on yourself. So the advice was to keep reminding yourself why you're doing this. What's your reason?
That initial goal again, wanting fluency or confidence.
Exactly. Keeping that why in mind. And also celebrating the small victories.
Acknowledging the progress, however small, like learning those 5 new phrases we talked about earlier.
Yes. Being happy about that progress. Giving yourself credit. That helps build momentum. But there was a warning, too.
Don't let the breaks turn into just stopping.
Yeah. It's easy for motivation to dip when you're the only one accountable, so you have to be a bit mindful of keeping that engine running.
It all seems to loop back, doesn't it? Manageable goals,
Yeah.
realistic schedule, taking breaks. It makes the whole thing feel less like a huge mountain to climb.
Exactly. Taking it step by step, like the sources suggested, self-studying offers amazing control over your learning.
It really does. Okay, so let's quickly recap the key steps we pulled from the material you shared, just to make sure we've got them.
Okay, first up, set a goal, but make it specific and manageable, something that tells you exactly what to work on.
Second, make a schedule that fits you, your energy, your life, and break down the study time into specific mini-tasks.
Third, prepare. Get your materials, your space, everything ready before you sit down to study. No wasted time.
Fourth, create a dedicated study space. Keep it tidy, keep it focused, keep distractions out. Airplane mode on the phone.
Fifth, don't feel you have to be totally isolated. Connect with others sometimes for practice, feedback, or just a motivation boost.
And finally, sixth, take short breaks when you need to recharge. But keep yourself motivated by remembering your why and celebrating those wins, big or small.
That sums it up nicely. Building a routine takes effort, for sure, but it doesn't have to be this overwhelming, scary thing.
You're doing it for you. Taking charge of your own learning journey, that's pretty powerful.
It really is. The progress you make feels earned.
So here's a little something to think about based on everything we've discussed today. Thinking about your own study habits right now, which one of these steps could you try this week? Just one. Maybe making your goal a tiny bit more specific, or spending just 5 minutes preparing your materials beforehand, or maybe just committing to airplane mode during your next session.
Yeah, just pick one small change. How could that make your next study time feel just a little bit easier, a little more effective? Give that some thought as you go about your day.